Hey gamers, Dr. Tracy. Here is the second video in this series for this week on what we're doing in game programming. And if you got the announcement, you saw that you have two chapters to cover from the writing programs page, and that's chapter 5 and chapter 6. This is chapter 6. This is going to be a short one because this is using the debugger. And so if you go to using the debugger, there's no new project in this chapter. This chapter is just dedicated to checking your code to make sure that what you do with your code is what you mean to do with your code. So, oh, why is it not fitting on the page? There we go. Now it is. So let's take a look at this and let's just go through the types of bugs. There's three types of bugs. The first is a syntax error. Syntax errors are my favorite because they're the easiest ones to fix. Syntax errors are the ones that pop up in nice red and tell you what line and what's going wrong and why it's a problem. So syntax errors you're going to get the most often. That's usually going to be something that is you put in the wrong letter, you forgot a semicolon, you made something capitalized when it's supposed to be lowercase or vice versa. You did something that the interpreter doesn't understand. And so you need to go back through it. And even if you don't see the error, there's definitely an error there if it gets a syntax error. So there's something that's wrong. Now the second type of error is called a runtime error. And these happen when, bugs that happen when the program is running. And this will work until it reaches the end of the code and then it terminates with an error. When that happens, that's typically because although your code didn't have a syntax problem, you tried to add 3 plus 5 plus spaghetti and it did not know how to do that. So you created something in your problem that's going to create an error that you're not able to do because you can't run it based on what happened. You're calling for a function doesn't exist. You're trying to write to a file that doesn't exist. Stuff like that creates runtime errors. The third listed here is semantic errors, which are the trickiest to fix. These are the ones that don't come up with an obvious error. This is also called a logic error. A semantic error is when you try and say 2 plus 3 equals toaster, and you don't know that the answer is wrong because you didn't test those values. The way that you can find semantic errors is by finding test values and see what the results are as they come up when you're running your program. So there is a little bit of a debugger. It's in idle. So if you open up idle and you wanted to check your file, you can use the debug control, which will help you walk through some of the pieces so you can see where the errors are. That'll give you more information if you do come up with an error message. Stepping through the program with debugger lets you go line by line and see how values turn out. Globals and locals are defined according to the variables that you create. If you create a variable in the main py file, then that's going to be a global variable. If instead you create a variable in a function, then that is a local variable. This chapter also talks about go and quit button. So if you don't want to use a debug controller to go through, we can just use the go and quit button so that it walks through each step of what's going on in there. Now, when you find the program, you make the changes. Of course, you want to save it. It's nice to show new revisions so you know where changes have been made. Another way to debug is now to set breakpoints. If you put breakpoints in there where you say stop at this part, that way you can check to see what is working as the program works to this part, because Python is an interpreted language and it does line by line. So this is a use of breakpoints. This is going to create breakpoints that once you walk through it, you'll be able to find where errors are. So read through this and get some helpful ideas on how to fix your Python programs. This is a short one, but this is just a bit of the things that are covered in Chapter 6. There is no additional project for Chapter 6.